Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. Here at Cafe Oleh with Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need here in Israel to succeed. Whether that's reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, flirting, dating, complaining, job interviewing, all the everyday things you do in your native language, but here in Israel in modern day Hebrew. As always, we'd want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. You can always be in touch with us by email at hebrew@nbn.org.il. That's HEBREW at nbn.org.il. If you're joining us live on Zoom, you can write us in the chat with any questions, comments, concerns, and requests, especially for upcoming classes you would like. You can also see all of our previous lessons up on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Oleh. You will see first a preview of our playlist with over 120 videos. We're getting close to 20,000 views on them, which is incredible. Not only can you watch any of our previous lessons up there and get the attached vocabulary spreadsheet with it, you can also leave us a comment there, and we definitely check those as well. So today's class, as I mentioned last week, next week is Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is considered the saddest day in the Jewish calendar, where some of the worst events in Jewish history took place, including even into the modern period. And so for housekeeping reasons, actually, because next week is the start of the 25-hour fast when we normally start class, we will not be having class on Monday next week. Just as a little housekeeping, but I'll let you know a reminder afterwards at the end of class, as well as what we're going to talk about in 2 weeks from now. And so I thought today was appropriate, not just because of the upcoming holiday, but in general and where we're at right now with the news and everything else, is to review how we talk about history in Hebrew. And it's a very short vocabulary, but it's an important vocabulary list because some of the terms for specific periods of history are unique in Hebrew, especially when we're talking about our own history. And some of them are just important for how we talk about time. We've done classes about time before, like telling time and units of time. We haven't talked about in terms of history, and that's important both in general, also important because Jews and Israelis always talk about history, and everything is a very long history, and referring back to history is important. And third, for those who would join us at Cafe Oleh Conversations on Wednesdays, this week you're going to be tasked with telling a story, either your own past or something in the historical past. And so you're going to need to know some of the vocabulary that we use here in order to be able to refer to something that took place in the past. Past tense isn't good enough. You need to be able to use timestamps, as they're often called. So we have a short vocabulary list here to talk about history. If we have time, we're going to do a review of Israeli geography, meaning terms and general place holdings in Israel. And then before we sign off and answer your questions and talk about class in 2 weeks' time, I want to show you a small clip from a very popular show here in Israel that has very much to do with history, telling time, and Tisha B'Av, as well as our modern history as well. So with that, let's get started. As always, you are welcome to screenshot, old school pen and paper, or simply wait to get your own copy of the vocabulary list and sit back and watch and enjoy and immerse yourself as you would in any class. We've gotten a couple requests, and I love this request. Can we have the vocabulary sheet ahead of class? I'm thinking back to learning languages on my own in formal classes, not to mention classes that didn't have anything to do with language. As much as I didn't get the lecture in advance, much less the notes in advance, we're really heartened by your enthusiasm here, and we might have ways to solve that in the future. In the meantime, here's what we're talking about. If you have questions about our specific class right now, please write it in the Q&A. Everything else, please keep in the chat, and please keep the personal chat to a minimum as well. So, very important when we talk about history in Hebrew. We have two terms for history in Hebrew. The first one is simply the English, and you're going to find that a lot of words when we talk about history in Hebrew are going to use cognates, meaning it's the same word in another language. We just Hebraicized it in that we write it in a Hebrew script. We made it sound more like Hebrew, but it's not a Hebrew word in origin. Case in point, history. Yes, there are ways to say history in Hebrew that are of a Hebrew origin, but honestly, and most of the time, you're going to hear the word historia. Historia, 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 however you say the letter resh, doesn't matter. This is the word you're going to hear the most for history. It's simply the cognate from other languages into Hebrew, historia, with one exception, and it's an important exception that everyone needs to pay attention to, is when we talk about Jewish history. When we talk about Jewish history, whether you're learning it in an academic lesson or you're reading it online or whatever it may be, we do almost never say Historia Yehudit. There are people who will say that, right? Yehudit, Jewish, as an adjective. However, the correct way to say Jewish history in Hebrew is Toldot Yisrael. Okay, this is something you're not necessarily going to learn in other Hebrew classes, right? Sort of the meta look of how do we talk about ourselves, much less our history. And this is it. You don't normally hear, much less say, Historia Yehudit. There are people who will say that. The proper way to refer to Jewish history in Hebrew is Toldot Israel. Toldot is coming from the same root as the verb to give birth, birthday, homeland, everything that has to do with birth, right? So something about the history of ourselves, but it's not just the history of ourselves, it's the history of our collective selves. Toldot Yisrael. And this is not Yisrael as in Medinat Yisrael, as in modern history. No, Toldot Yisrael is the entire 4,000 plus years of Jewish history when we say Toldot Yisrael. Okay, so someone who's learning Jewish history as a major in university is learning Toldot Yisrael. Yesh lo toar betoldot Yisrael. He has a degree in Jewish history. Okay, that's how you're going to say it. Here are some timestamps, not in terms of telling time right now, but in larger, bigger blocks of period. Ta'arich. Ta'arich, or simply as we say in modern Hebrew, tarich, is date. Date not as in a fruit, date as in a date on the calendar. Right? Ta'arich. Ta'arich, by the way, listen to how I pronounce it for you learning Hebrew versus how I would normally pronounce it. If I'm getting you to pronounce it, it's ta'arich. That aleph is important to pronounce. However, in modern Hebrew, when you're just speaking fast, and you do speak fast, it's simply tarich. You just elongate that ah a little bit longer instead of a full glottal stop, right? I don't say ta'arich. You can, ma ta'arich hayom, or you say ma ta'arich hayom, right? A little bit faster, a little bit more elided. Idan. Idan means an era or age, and this is very important when we talk about era or age. Idan in Hebrew, as I wrote here in the notes on the left-hand side, it's referring more to movements. Movements as in philosophical movements, social movements, and so forth. We're not talking about an era or an age in terms of physical time, not physical time, but you know what I mean, in terms of chronological time, right? So for example, Ha'idana Moderni. Ha'idana Moderni, the modern era or the modern age, right? That's how we use this term to talk about a general period of time with regards to a movement or how it relates one thing to another, not by other markers. Another marker, however, is when we use the word tkufa. Tkufa means a period in time. Okay, tkufa is a period, but I said period in time lest you get confused as in the punctuation. That is a different word. Tkufa is a period of time or period in time. And this, as I wrote here, is used more for empires, for ruling countries and powers and things like that. So for example, in Hebrew, you can say the cognate for empire, which is imperia, or you can say tkufa. So for example, if I want to say the Ottoman Empire, an important part of the history of the land of Israel, as well as the Jews, I would say hatkufa haotmanit. Okay, tkufa, period in time. Otmani is simply the cognate of Ottoman in Hebrew. Okay, so hatkufa haotmanit literally means the Ottoman period, the Ottoman era, the Ottoman age, but it's understood when we talk in historical terms, that means the Ottoman Empire. You will hear people say Ha-Imperia Ottomanit, but you'll also more likely, and certainly this is the case if you just do a simple Google search and go on Wikipedia, Hatkufa Ha-Ottomanit, Hatkufa Ha-Byzantit, right? The Byzantine Empire, meaning the period in time in which this empire ruled and was a dominant force in our lives. That's what these two mean, the difference between Idan and Tkufa, which can both refer to a period of time. Aha, very important. The two words we use for big periods of time in Hebrew. We just talked about big periods in terms of many centuries altogether, right? And Idan, period in age or era, versus Tkufa, more specific period of time of ruling and rulers. What if I want to say century or millennium in Hebrew? We simply take the words that mean that period of time. A century is how many years? 100. The way we say century in Hebrew is the word for 100, mea. Mea means 100. It also means century. So if I want to say the 21st century, hamea ha'esrim ve'achat. Okay? The 20th century, hamea ha'esrim. The 19th century, hamea ha'chaesre, and so forth. Okay? This one, however, we don't normally talk like this. We don't usually say in the third millennium BCE, unless you're an actual historian. But I want to include that here, that you know the word. There is a word indeed in Hebrew for millennium, which is simply the word for 1,000, elef. Nice and easy, right? The same words for the numbers of years in that period is also the word for the period itself. Mea, century, also 100. Elef, millennium, also 1,000. Okay, how do we say BCE and CE in Hebrew? This one is very important. Shnat, and we'll get to that in a minute, but Shana is a year. Let's say I put in a year here. Let's say I want to say 2000 BCE, the year 2000 BCE. How would I say this? Shnat alpaim lifnei hasfira. Okay, literally the year 2000 before the counting. Sfira means counting, right? What is it talking about, hasfira? Hasfira is short in Hebrew for hasfira hanotzrit, for the Christian counting, right? Meaning BCE and CE have been adopted by a lot of people around the world, as opposed to what has been used for many years, which was BC and AD, which were Christian in context and origin. BC, before Christ, AD, Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, meaning before and after Jesus was born, right? Jews in Israel, we don't use that. And also increasingly, societies around the world don't use those terms. Instead, we use BCE and CE before the Common Era and the Common Era. It's still the same periods, but we use more secular terms. However, in Hebrew, we make it clear we understand this is not the Jewish calendar. This is the Gregorian calendar. This is the secular civil calendar. And that's why when we say Shnat blah, blah, blah lifnei hasfira, or Shnat blah, blah, blah lasfira, for example, right now, Hashana hazoti, Shnat 2024 lasfira. Right now, it is 2024 CE, right? But that sfira, that counting of time, is referring to hasfira hanotzrit. We don't say that every time. Instead, we just say lifnei hasfira or la sfira. BCE, lifnei hasfira, CE, la sfira. Okay, this is only, by the way, for non-Jewish calendars. Jewish calendars and Jewish dates have an entirely different system. I encourage you to look that up rather than spending time talking about it here, because it's more complicated in terms of numbers that Hebrew letters have, so forth. Okay, how do I say such and such years ago? You're going to take the preposition lifnei, before, blank, shana or shanim. So if I wanted to say, for example, 3 years ago, lifnei shalosh shanim. If I wanted to say 20 years ago, lifnei esrim shana. You're all probably raising your hand, Jay. Why did you say something different for shana and shanim? It's a great question. In Hebrew, traditionally, numbers 1 through 10, or rather 2 through 10, are counted as plurals, and they're treated as plurals. So you would say shalosh shanim, 3 years, arba shanim, 4 years, and so forth, up until eser, 10, eser shanim. When you get to 11 to at least 100, if not more, you typically turn the word shana back into a singular. Achadesle shana. Now, in everyday Hebrew, you can use either. As long as you're at 11 or above, you can say shana or shanim. Okay, it's both understood to be completely, and it's completely correct. The only thing you absolutely have to do is between the numbers 2 through 10, you have to say shanim, right? So 9 years ago, lifnei tesha shanim. Okay. However, apropos talking about time, so lifnei 18 shana aliti arza, or lifnei 18 shanim aliti arza. What does that mean? It's actually my aliyah-versary in another week and some change. So I just said 18 years ago, lifnei 18 shana, or lifnei 18 shanim, aliti arza. Okay? I made aliyah to Israel. Yes, you can say the traditional way, and we've talked about this before. It's one of my pet peeves not to say asiti aliyah, even though that's understood in modern Hebrew. The proper Hebrew is aliti arza. We'll talk about arza in a second. But that's how we use years ago. Let's get to some more place words for telling time. Me'az. Me'az means since. Okay, you're going to see this on, for example, signs of stores or restaurants. Since blah, blah, blah time, right? When the place was founded or established, right? Me'az 1947, since 1947. Okay, that's how you would do it. We have a whole lesson, by the way, on numbers and counting in a previous lesson up on YouTube. Likewise, you'll see on a lot of signs, but also talking about places. For example, in Israel, right? When was a kibbutz or a moshav or a town founded? Nosad. Nosad is established, right? So if you, for example, if you go into a kibbutz, it'll have at its welcome sign, it'll say the name of the kibbutz, and it'll say under it Me'az or Nosad and the date it was established. Usually Nosad. Nosad was established, right? Nosad, Nosda is the feminine version of it in the past. Hakama is founding. Anything can be founded, right? For example, you'll hear the term Hakamat Medinat Yisrael, the founding of the state of Israel, right? Anything can be understood as Hakama. However, we have a special word in Hebrew that we really only use for Israel, but you will hear it in several other contexts, certainly in the immediate news. And that word is Tkuma. Tkuma really means the reestablishment or the refounding or the re-getting up, right? It's coming from the same root as lakum, to get up, and it's the same root that gives us the word hakama, lehakim, to found something. But tkuma means to reestablish something, to do it again, right? To get up again. Right? And if we think about Toldot Israel, Jewish history, and Hakamat Medinat Israel, the founding of the state of Israel, it is very much tkuma, getting back up, right? And it's the reason why the civil administration that's tasked with rehabilitating the South after October 7th is called Minhelet Tkuma. Minhelet is simply administration. Tkuma, this word, this getting up again, right? The idea that it's going to rise again, okay? That's what we talk about here with reestablishment. A couple words that are unique in Hebrew, in that you can't translate them literally from English because they have their own terms in Hebrew. These are often older ones. Okay, I just want to see where we are time-wise. Okay, first one is the Middle Ages. Now, there was a meme a few months ago about what's your Roman Empire, right? What's the thing that makes you geek out? Hatkufa haromanit, as we would say in Hebrew, or ha-imperia haromanit. But so I'm saying that in the context of we don't always talk about the Middle Ages every day, right? But should it come up, again, understanding that Hebrew has its own terms, just like we've talked about, Hebrew has its own terms for the elements and for the planets and for the names of animals, right? There are certain things that are unique to Hebrew that can't be translated in and out. This is one of them. Yes, it does translate almost literally as the Middle Ages, but you wouldn't necessarily know how to frame it. This is Yemei HaBenaim. Yemei HaBenaim, the Middle Ages, right? Essentially that block of period, that Idan, that word again, from the collapse of the Roman Empire to the Renaissance, right? Yemei HaBenaim. This is not a term you can translate because Middle Ages in Hebrew is a compound word. Yemei, and I know this because Yamim is days, but here it's Yemei. The word Yamim turns into Yemei when it's part of a compound noun, right? In this case, Yemei HaBenaim. Benaim comes from the word that we often use for middle, in this case, Middle Ages. Another one I alluded to in last week's class, excuse me, as a preview for today, is Mas'eh Hatzlav. Masa, with an ayin at the end, is not just a very popular way for 18 to 30-year-olds to come to Israel on a long-term program through the Jewish Agency. Masa means a journey. Okay? It's simply a journey. Mas'eh, just like yamei, is telling you this is going to be a compound noun. It's going to be a series of nouns put together to create one new concept. Mas'eh hatzlav. Slav is a cross. Sadi lamed bet is a cross. So the voyages or the journeys of the cross is how we say in Hebrew the Crusades. An unfortunate part of Jewish history to know in terms of what happened to Jews along the crusade path as well as in the land of Israel during it. Masei Hatzlav, another term you're not necessarily going to know just by looking at the word crusades, except the word crusades also has the term cross in it. And then finally, one last one. A lot of different societies and countries in the world will claim to have had or are still in a Tol HaZahav or Tol Zahav. Tol HaZahav is the golden age. So for example, we talk often in history about Tol HaZahav Bisfarad, the golden age in Spain, or Tol HaZahav Imperia Ottomanit in the Ottoman Empire and so forth, right? Tol HaZahav, literally the Tol is a line, right? We talked about this as in a Q, and Zahav is gold. But together, it means the golden age. This is just simply an expression put together. Okay. And then finally, in our little bit looking at time and timestamps, excuse me, Pa'am. Pa'am means one time, right? Pa'am is time, not the larger sense of time. That's Zman. But if I say Pa'am, it means like an occurrence of something, one time, as in a one-time occurrence. It doesn't literally mean one-time occurrence, but I'm trying to describe it to you. However, if I'm telling a story, and I'm not telling a story saying once upon a time, because there are very few times in this world where, unless we're reading from a fairy tale in a book, we're starting a conversation with once upon a time. Oftentimes, we're trying to retell a story. This is going to be one of the cues that people who join us for Wednesday's conversations class are going to use to start telling a story. Pa'am, and then I start the story in the past tense, right? once, blah, blah, blah. So for example, פעם טיילתי חודש שלם בטורקיה, והייתה הרפתקה אמיתית. פעם, once, טיילתי, I traveled, חודש שלם, a full month, חודש month, שלם full, בטורקיה, in Turkey. והייתה, and it was, הרפתקה, an adventure אמיתית, real adventure. Okay, that's how we use the term pa'am to be the start of a story. How do we tell a story? Pa'am, blah, 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 something. Okay, very simple. Okay, I actually want to stop here because I want to go over this piece of media before we get to geography, because if we don't do geography, it's a review of our previous lesson, but you'll still have the vocabulary list. So one of the things we've talked about before is, I think I've showed it to you before, if not, is a very popular show in Israel, or if it's not popular, it's certainly an important show, and it's called HaYehudim Ba'im. The Jews are coming. And what it is, it's on channel 11, Khan, the public broadcaster here. And it's essentially a satirical, insightful, entertaining, but also informative way of looking at Jewish history and Israeli history. It's not satire in the way that Eretz Nehederet is, which is much more contemporary societal satire. This is the scope and breadth of Jewish history and Israeli history. Those of you who are more familiar with Jewish education, you know the term midrash. Midrash is a further commentary and understanding on a piece of Jewish literature or of rabbinic literature or biblical history, using storytelling to understand it. That's what they're doing here. They're taking a piece of history and they explain it a little bit more, or they're making fun of it in a very biting way. So for example, since the start of the war, they did a great satire on Shimshon HaGibor, on Samson fighting off the Philistines in Gaza, and showing how similar that moment in the Bible is so similar to today. And they use similar language. It's a great piece. It's on YouTube in English. We're going to watch one that came out shortly after October 7th that is very much about Tisha B'Av that we commemorate next week, and this period of these 3 weeks that are leading up to the destruction of the temples in Jewish history and the practice of fasting, commemorating it on Tisha B'Av. I'm going to play it for you with English subtitles because everyone here is at different levels and I want you to be able to understand it. This is an educational program. So there is, I say that because some people have problems, not problems, some people have reservations about watching things during this period, especially as we get closer to Tisha B'Av and the 9 days before it. But number one, this is an educational class. This is a class, and therefore it's educational, and that usually overrides those things. Second, there is background music. However, there is no vocals. It's taped. It is not live. If you have a problem with any of those things, please mute your computers now. And when I come back and I stop sharing the screen, that's your cue to unmute, because we'll go back if we have time to listen to the rest of the class. But I do want to at least show you this clip because it talks and uses some of the language we just talked about with regards to telling time. You also want to look at the screen and the subtitles, both in English, both at the top of the screen and at the bottom. You'll understand why when you see this, you'll understand why it's so important to talk about history and learn the terms in Hebrew as we watch this. So let me pull that up now. Where are you? Here it is. Okay, I'm going to start it now. Oh, just 1 second. Almost there. One participant can share at a time. You may have seen this already, but I wanted to be sure to show it again because it's a very important piece. See if I can move this out of the way.
זה היה בבוקר של תשעה באב, התעוררנו מרעש מחריד, לא הבנו מה קורה. עד שהבנו, אז הרומאים התחילו לשרוף את המקדש. ותוך רגע הם מילאו את הרחובות, התחלנו לשמוע צעקות מרחוק, אז סגרנו את החלונות, נעלנו את הדלתות, וישבנו בשקט בלי להוציא מילה. ואז שמענו צרחות מהבית ליד.
הבנו שפרצו לבית של השכנים שלנו. משפחה נחמדה, האבא היה המוהל של הקהילה, הוא עושה לבן שלי את הברית. שמענו אותם צועקים, עד שלא שמענו יותר כלום. חשבנו לברוח ליער, אבל כל מי שניסה לברוח גילה שפשוט אי אפשר.
הם חיכו ברחובות ותפסו כל מי שיצא החוצה מהבית. השלג התערבב עם הדם. אנחנו חיכינו שמישהו יבוא לעזור לנו. המשטרה, הצבא, מישהו, אבל אף אחד לא בא. התפללנו לאלוהים, אבל גם הוא לא בא. הרגשנו כל כך לבד. ואז הם באו ודפקו אצלנו על החלונות, אז מהר לקחנו את הילדים, תפסנו אותם, רצנו לכיוון הגג. יכולנו לראות את כל הבתים מסביב, הכל אש, הכל שרוף. ראינו את הפנים שלהם, של האנשים שעד אתמול קנינו אצלם ירקות, הופכים חיות אדם.
הם היו באקסטזה, הם ניפצו את החלונות הרעבה, ראיתי אותם שורפים את החנות של אחותי, אחר כך עולים ושורפים את הבית כנסת, והכל היה מלא עשן וסמוכיות, לא חשבתי שבני אדם מסוגלים לעשות דברים כאלה. זה היה כאילו להסתכל על הרוע האנושי בעיניים.
הם ידעו בדיוק לאיזה בתים להיכנס, כי הם סימנו אותם בצבע אדום. הקטנה שלי שאלה אותי אם הם הולכים לרצוח גם אותנו. לא ידעתי מה להגיד לה. אמרתי לה, לפחות אנחנו ביחד.
כולם שואלים אם נצליח לחיות עם זה. אנחנו חייבים איכשהו להמשיך הלאה, לאט לאט, להתחיל לבנות מחדש.
את כל מה שהם הרסו, את כל מה שהם שרפו.
את המשפחות, את הקהילות, את העם.
אנחנו לא הולכים לשום מקום. אנחנו נמשיך לחיות פה.
נמשיך לחיות בשביל כל מי שאיבדנו, בשביל הילדים שלנו. אנחנו נהיה בסדר.
בפנים עמוק, אני יודעת את זה.
רק אם הייתי יכולה לראות עוד פעם אחת את אחותי.
הבן שלי, את אח שלי,
את האחיין שלי.
את אבא שלי.
את אמא שלי.
רק עוד חיבוק אחד.
I wanted to show that to you, not just because of how pertinent it is to what we're experiencing now and to how cyclical our history is. And now you listen to those testimonies, and that they could be from October 7th. They could have been from, as you saw, 2,000 years ago. At the top of the screen, you saw the timestamp in English. In the original broadcast in Hebrew, it says it in Hebrew. So it would say Yerushalayim Shiv'im Lasfira, 70 CE. And it would go through all those different places it went through. Mas'eh Hatzlav, Elef Tishim Veshesh, and so forth. So you would see that at the top of the screen. You can watch both the English version and the Hebrew version, and is in subtitles on YouTube. And we'll, of course, send you that link. So you can watch it again, as well as find the Hebrew version of it. We have a little bit of time before I answer some questions in the Q&A, but I wanted to be sure that we could show you that before answering your questions and talking about class in 2 weeks from now. So the other thing that's important in talking about this period that leading up to Tisha B'Av is how important it reconnects us back to the land and to the land of Israel, because it's not just commemorating anything, but the destruction of the two temples. So it's a good chance to review some of the geography terms we've already talked about in the past, but just so that you have them again in the same space. When we're talking about time, it's also important to talk about space. One of the things we talk about in we talk about this a lot is the suffix a. here is not referring to a feminine word. However, it's referring to something going words. So for example, you've probably heard the expression, Ani chozer habaita. If you want to say, I'm coming home, you're not going to say it any other way in Hebrew other than Ani chozer habaita. Here's the word right here, habaita. Okay? Ani chozer habaita. I am returning home. I am going home. Okay? Habaita obviously is not the normal word for house, right? Bait is a house. However, habaita indicates I'm going towards a house, or as we would say in very fancy English, homeward. I am going homeward. I am returning home is another way to think about it. But we use that at the end of certain directional words to indicate we're going in the direction of something. So this is, for example, if you're giving directions to someone and you're telling them to turn right, you're going to not say, you're not going to literally say turn right or a right turn here. You're simply going to say yamina. Yamin is right, as in your right hand or right side of something. Not correct, right. Yamina, however, is rightwards, meaning in the direction of right, turning right. Smola is turning left, right? These are terms you hear all the time. Or for example, daroma. Daroma is southwards. Darom is south. Daroma, the direction of south. This is also the reason why, and I talk about this a few times in the past, when you're on Rakevet Israel, when you're on Israel Railways, when you're on the train in Israel, and they tell you the announcement of the next stop, and if that stop already ends in a sound, you're going to hear it sound slightly different. So for example, if you are going to Herzliya, which is how we normally say the town Herzliya, you're going to hear the announcement say, Atachana ba'a, right, the next station, Herzliya, right? Because the train is going towards Herzliya, therefore it's Herzliya. It's going towards Herzliya or Netanya, right? Netanya is how we normally say the town, but however, when you're going in the direction of Netanya, they're going to say Netanya, right? The inflection goes on the last syllable to indicate the direction you are. That is the direction you are going. Right? A few more things in the short time we have left. Where is and how do you get to? These are really important, not just because you should always know how to ask for directions, even if you don't always understand. Most of the times the answer is yashal. Yashal simply means straight ahead, which you'll see in a second. Efo is the question word in Hebrew meaning where. Okay, so let's say I want to say Efo hayam, where is the sea? If I'm here in Tel Aviv, Efo hayam, or a very common question, Efo Dizengoff Center, where is Dizengoff Center? People use that as a very common compass point. Ech magi'im le, how do you get to? This is a really important distinction, and one of the many, many, many reasons why you cannot always translate literally from English into Hebrew or any other language and vice versa. In English, we say, how do you get to? Right? In Hebrew, we say, how do you arrive to? A very different construct. Ech magi'im le. Ech magi'im layam. Ech magi'im le Dizengoff Center. How do I get to the beach or Dizengoff Center? In English, we say get to. In Hebrew, we say megi'im. Lehagia is to arrive. How do I arrive at? Right? If you say in English, how do I arrive at the beach? Or how do I, arrive to the beach? That doesn't sound right. In Hebrew, that's how you say it. Okay? Two very common ways to give someone directions, especially if you are asked, and take it as a compliment. If someone asks you, don't get flustered, take a breath, smile, and say, yashal, yashal. Keep going straight. A very common way to give someone directions in Hebrew. Just keep going straight. Yashal, yashal. Okay, yashal means straight. Yashal, yashal, you're just emphasizing, just keep going straight. And you can even say yashal yashal ad hasof. Keep going straight until the end of the street, the end of your patience, whatever it may be. Ad hasof, until the end. A very classic way. If you can't direct them any more specifically, yashal yashal ad hasof. Keep going straight until the end. Okay, let's talk some geography here. This is going to be sort of a larger view of Israeli geography and also of roads. And the difference in words in roads, very important. Kvish or kvishim. In Hebrew, we have a couple different words that if you just plugged them into a certain translation service for free, it's going to give you all the same words and they mean road. That is incorrect. Kvish in Hebrew means a highway. Not as just it means that, it is used as that. And we're talking about practical application of the language in which we're learning. This is a great example. Excuse me. If you want to say highway in Hebrew, it's kvish. It is not any other word. If you want to refer to a highway, it's kvish. I know some translation services will call a kvish a road. That is incorrect. It is a highway. Kvish echad is the highway that connects Tel Aviv and Yerushalayim. Kvish Shtaim, called Kvish Achof, it's known as Kvish Achof, the coastal highway. Highway number 2, it goes up the coast of the Mediterranean, right, and so forth. We'll get to a few of those in a minute. Rechov is a road. This you can call a road or a street, right? Rechov Dizengoff, right? Dizengoff Street. Rechov Jabotinsky, Jabotinsky Street. Rechov Herzl, Herzl Street. Whatever it may be, a road or a street. But as in an urban setting or a suburban setting, not a highway. Derech, or the plural drachim, is a way. This is usually a bigger road that's somewhere between a road and a highway. Derech Begin, for example. Derech Begin is Begin, Menachem Begin way, you would translate it. Derech, by the way, is not just a physical way, it's also the means of doing something. אפשר להירשם דרך האפליקציה שלנו. You can sign up using our, by way of, via, using our application, our app. Okay, Derech is a bigger road. So for example, here in Tel Aviv, we have Derech Begin. Derech Begin is a multi-lane road. It is not a highway, but it's not a simple road because it is a big thoroughfare. A stera, or sterot, the plural, if you want to know where the term sterot comes from, this is where it is. A stera is an avenue or a boulevard. Okay, sterot is the plural. So for example, I live, ani gar, karov lesterat Rothschild, or Sterot Rothschild is actually called. I live close to Rothschild Boulevard, or Rothschild Avenue, right? A boulevard and an avenue is usually defined as having a median strip in the middle. And the reason why it's called Sterot Rothschild is it has multiple lanes on either side of a long pedestrian thoroughfare in the middle, right? Sterot Rothschild, Rothschild Avenue, Rothschild Boulevard, however you'd like to translate it. Simta or Simtaot, alley. All right. Let's get to some other ones really quick and talking about geography because we're running out of time. Very important thing when you are navigating either as the driver or as the backseat driver, or you're just looking up directions in Hebrew. Very easy to tell how the highway system works in Israel, just like in other countries. For example, the United States, if you don't know how the numbers work, I won't tell you you shouldn't be driving, but yes. In Hebrew, in Israel, a primary highway, meaning a main highway, will be one digit. So for example, Kvish Achof is Kvish Shtaim, right? It's the highway that goes up and down the coast. The original coastal highway is Kvish Arba, which runs parallel to Kvish Shtaim, goes up and down Israel from the north to the south. Israel's longest highway, we'll get to in a second, is also it's actually a secondary highway, but it's also a even number. If you didn't figure that out already, now you know. Roads, highways in Israel that go north and south have even numbers. Those that go east-west or west-east are odd numbers. So for example, Kvish Echad, right? Kvish Achad, which connects Tel Aviv and Yerushalayim, and thus it goes this way, is a odd number. One is an odd number. Kvish Chamesh, which connects from the north between Tel Aviv and Herzliya and goes east towards Ra'anana and Kfar Saba and Hod HaSharon, is Kvish Chamesh, Highway 5. Okay. A secondary highway is going to be 2 digits. Same rule applies. If it's even, it goes north-south or south-north. If it's odd, it will go east-west, west-east, whatever your direction is. Okay, I know I always get flack for saying east-west or west-east because people don't like that I do that. Tough. There's really no other way for me to describe that in the little time we have and not holding up an atlas while I'm doing this. Next time, maybe we'll do that. Hey, Israel's longest highway is actually a secondary highway, Kvish Tishim, that goes all the way from Metula in the north, all the way to Eilat in the south. Kvish Tishim, Highway 90. Tertiary, 3 digits. Quaternary, that very uncomfortable word, 4 digits, right? The smaller the number, the bigger the highway it is, the more major and of a thoroughfare it is. The larger the number, the smaller it is. So there are a lot of quaternary highways up in the north in particular, a lot of 4-digit highways, very small distances, but are still marked as a highway. Omes is the term we use for traffic. There is the word pkakim. That's like backed up traffic, but omes is simply the general term for traffic, something that is busy. And the adjective is amus, means both backed up, it also means busy. So if you say that you are amus, ani amusayom, I have a lot to do today, I am busy. Makaf is a bypass or a detour. Somet is a junction. Mechlaf, interchange. You've probably heard these words before. Now you're connecting it with, for example, the names of Yetziot, of exits in Israel off the Kvishim, off the highways. Somet this versus Mechlaf that. Or if you listen to the traffic reports, these are the terms you're going to hear. We name our exits in Israel. We don't give them numbers. They have names. And then finally, an important one as a pedestrian, Zchut Kadima. There is such a thing as Zchut Kadima in Israel called right of way. That's not just for pedestrians, that's also for cars that approach the intersection at the same time, who has the Zchut Kadima, the right of way. Okay, these are some geographical terms in Hebrew that we use. I'm actually going to go through these because the geographical place names I think many of you know, and you'll have that as well in this spreadsheet. Atar is both a website, but it simply means a site, right? We call atar internet we're taking the term atar, which means simply a site, to use as like a website in technological terms, but simply an atar is a site. That could be an atar tayruti, a tourist site, or just any site, S-I-T-E. Tatzpit is a viewpoint, coming from the verb litzpot, to watch. Har is a mountain. I'm sure many of you knew that already. However, we have other words for raised pieces of land, how shall we say. Giv'ah is a hill. Bitronot is such a seemingly random term, but it became very popular about 5 years ago when Israel hosted the Eurovision Song Contest. And like most countries, in between performances, they do a snapshot of a part of the country with a performer from a various country performing in that place. And one of the sites became very famous because no one in Israel had heard of it before, practically no one, called Bitronot Nechama, or as they translate into English, the Nechama Badlands. And everyone looked at each other while watching this, so proud that Israel was hosting because they had won the previous year, saying, where on earth is the Nechama Badlands and what is a badland? I'm not going to get into Badlands, but basically they do have to, they deal with elevated pieces of land. Machtesh is a specific term that in Geographical is used throughout the world, even though it primarily appears in the land of Israel. However, because of that, we don't have another word for it. A machtesh is not a crater. A crater indicates that something external struck the earth and caused an indentation. That is not a machtesh. A machtesh is a riverbed that basically the foundations of it collapse and it creates what looks like a crater, but in fact is not. Israel is home to most of them in the world, and therefore the term that's used geographically around the world is Hebrew, one of the few that's that case. Reches or reches is a ridge, again, elevated piece of land. Nahar is a river, meaning something that flows almost entirely nonstop throughout the year, versus a nachal. Nachal in modern Hebrew is a creek or a stream, and this is usually a seasonal body of water, meaning it only runs in the winter when there's rain, and thus there's water on the ground, as opposed to a nahal, which is always having water, even if it's a little bit. Wadi is the Arabic term for Nachal. They're both used interchangeably. Nowadays, Nachal can also mean a creek or a stream, so there is a constant flow, but it's really small. And a wadi is more seasonal. The difference is very minuscule. Don't worry if you mess them up. Gai is a ravine versus Emek is a valley. What's the difference between a ravine and a valley? I let you look that up yourselves. And a really big valley is a bik'ah. Think of it this way. Gai, Emek, Bik'ah, small to big, small, medium, big. Gai, Emek, Bik'ah. Okay, small ravine, medium valley, big valley. That's the difference between the three, but I'll let you look that up online. Okay, I want to move on. Nope, actually, we are out of time. The rest of this is how do we take apart the this map over here. Let's show it. See if I can scoot on over. Have the map of Israel here and have the Hebrew terms for all the different parts of it that are outlined here. So you can also label the map geographically as you would like. You have all those terms here. I'm going to stop here because we're out of time, but these words are here for you. And then before I get to questions, first off, Toda Rabba, thank you all for joining. Next week, as I said, we do not have class because it will be Erev Tisha B'Av, and wishing those who fast a tzom mo'il, a meaningful fast. Fast should not be easy, it should be meaningful. Mo'il with an ayin is how we say that in Hebrew, meaningful. 2 weeks from now, we are going to be celebrating a holiday. It is a little known Jewish holiday, except in Israel, where it has taken on bigger terms. And in 2 weeks from now, it actually will be the day, it'll be just ending that day, which is Tu B'Av. If Tisha B'Av is the saddest day of the year, Tu B'Av is one of the happiest days of the year. Tu B'Av literally means the 15th of Av, and Tu B'Av is also known as the Jewish Valentine's Day. And it has to do with everything from drinking wine to wearing white. So we're going to be talking about, as it's known again as the Jewish Valentine's Day, we're going to be reviewing all the terms we have in Hebrew for showing affection. Like, love, like, affection, terms of endearment, all the things that have to do with that topic, love, endearment, liking, loving, all those things, how we say them in modern Hebrew, how we express them, what's the difference between terms, why you don't want to always be using the verb le'ehov, even though you were taught probably that it means both to like and love. There are other verbs that are actually much more appropriate to use to show affection and love for one another. We're going to go through all of that together, as well as some classic terms of endearment in modern Hebrew. With that, let me check the Q&A. Let's get started. Is there an abbreviation for Lifnei HaSfira? There absolutely is. Great question. Let me show it to you. I can open up my screen. Oops, sorry. Let's move this back. Usually the abbreviation is going to look something like this. Lif in Hebrew, of course. it's going to look like that. Lifnei hasfira. Right? Lifnei hasfira, you don't usually pronounce this, but it's going to look something like that. Great question. Q&A. Why is there a chupchik after the letter taf in the word Ottoman? Great question. Because in Arabic and in Turkish, it's Othmani. It's a th sound. In English, we don't say that. We say Ottoman. Actually, if you listen to Turks, they say Osman, which was the name of the original guy who founded the dynasty, Osman. In Arabic, it's Othman, which then in English became Ottoman. So in proper Hebrew, it's Othmani, but you simply say Otmani. But it's there just to remind you that it's not Otmani. It should be Othmani. How do you say 3 centuries ago? Lifnei shalosh me'ot. Now that sounds weird. I gotta say, you're not normally talking about that. Normally, you would normally say Lifnei shlosh me'ot shana, right? Because again, remember me'ah. Go back to that. Me'ah means both a century and 100. So there's no reason in Hebrew not to just add the word shana. Lifnei shloshmod shana, or shloshmod shanim, right? 300 years ago. Yes, you can say lifnei shalosh me'ot, but it's going to sound like something is missing in Hebrew. I know in English we would say 3 centuries ago, or we could say 300 years ago. Hebrew, you're going to say lifnei shlosh me'ot shana. It's what you're going to hear the most. How do you say Ice Age, Bronze Age, etc.? Great question. If I didn't include it here, it means that you can translate it yourselves. It means that it does not have a unique Hebrew thing. So for example, Bronze Age. How do you think you say Bronze Age? If I didn't put it on here, and it means it's not an idiomatic expression, right? So you're going to take the word idan that you just learned, and you're going to look for the word bronze in Hebrew. Put them together, Bronze Age in Hebrew. Same thing with Ice Age. Idan, maybe tkufa, either one, the word for ice. Okay. In Hebrew, unless I put it up there, it's going to be the same as in English. So Bronze Age, idan a nechoshet. Nechoshet is bronze. Or idan a bronza is sometimes how you'll see it. They're literally translating it from Hebrew, from English. They're just using the word idan instead of age in English. What is the difference between tialti and nasati for I traveled? Great question. Tialti is I traveled. Traveling in the sense of touring. Litayel is to travel in the sense of touring, whereas linsoa is to travel a long distance, or simply to go a long distance. That's a very important difference because the verb lalechet, ani holech, means I'm going, but it's referring to a short distance. Ani nosea is a long distance. I'm going a long distance. So for example, ani holech la super, I'm going to the supermarket because that's a short distance. Aval ani nosea layam, I'm going to the sea or to the beach, meaning it's a longer distance. I can't necessarily just walk there. Ani metayel bachof, I'm traveling or I'm touring or I'm visiting the beach. Those are all contained in it. I'm traveling for the sake of touring or visiting for touristic purposes is the verb litayel. Great question. What I have heard is yashar ve'yashar, yashar ve'az tishalu. Great question. Great way to say it, right? Instead of saying yashar ad hasof, instead of saying keep going until the end, this person is saying they've heard yashar, keep going straight, ve'az tishalu, and then ask someone else. Another great way to say it. I get stuck when I tell an Israeli, this is a great one. Israel doesn't have blocks. This is so I tell this story. I told you all that I volunteer farm at least once a week, and we were talking about this in the context of one of the fellow volunteers, who's also one of the organizers, is in love with traveling in the United States. And he talked about how much he loved Manhattan and everything like that. And he said something about, Ken, מה זה המילה blocking? מה זה blocking? What is this word blocks? I don't know this word blocks. And so I explained to him in Hebrew that in Manhattan, just like other cities in America, not all, but in some cities, a block is a specific measurement of distance, right? So I blew his mind when I told him that in many parts of Manhattan, 20 blocks equals a mile. And he's like, ma is that? I was like, I know, because you can tell someone who's a local versus not a local when they say, kama blokim ad magim lazeh Tel Aviv, right? There is no such thing. A block is not a standard measurement in Israel. Instead, we use the word rechov. So, for example, I want to say to someone, be'od shlosha rechovot pnu smola. In another 3 blocks, turn left. That's what that means. Okay? We use the term road instead of block in Hebrew. Is there another word for traffic? Yes, pkak, pkakim, pkak tnua is another way to say it. A blockage of movement. How are you differentiating the primary, secondary, tertiary? Is it about length of the road? No, it's not about length of the road. It's about oftentimes how many lanes there are, but also the amount of traffic that's on it. Major, right? A primary highway is a primary highway. It means it's used by many more people than a secondary one, which is used by many more than a tertiary and so forth. Don't we call the Ramon crater the Machtesh? We do, absolutely. Machtesh Ramon. Machtesh in geological terms is an acceptable term throughout the world. They can't probably say cha, so they call it a crater. But the proper geographical term in English is a Machtesh. Okay, we need to stop here, unfortunately, as we are well out of time. Toda rabah, thank you all for joining and for asking your questions and for listening. Like I said, next week we are off for Tisha B'Av. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Wednesday, join us for Cafe Oleh Conversations, where we're going to be using this vocabulary to tell a story from our own past or from history. Until then, toda rabah and lehitraot. See you all very soon.